Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromant goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromant and Warner, but Boromant's got the inside.
A guest star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see that Putin's the lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the
Okay, and here we are. Welcome everyone to PSGL F4 on PC. I'm your host for tonight. My name is Mitsky, and I'm joined here alongside with Zataxter. How are you doing, man?
Oh, I've been spectacular. At least I wish I had been as spectacular as I am right now last week around, but I wasn't. Regardless, as always, on the edge of my seat ahead of a race in the middle of the week. Seems like we're heading to Miami, so all pumped and set to go.
Yeah, for us both, the first race here at PSGL in 2024. Last week we had Jess and Max covering for us for the Grand Prix at the Circuit de Catalunya. So I'll first take you through the results of that race before showing you the calendar, what's up for grabs still, and then to take a quick look at the standings. But first, the results. So last time around in Spain, we had pole position for Andres Franco with a second place, only 11,000 of a second behind reserve driver Daniel Parodi, who will also be driving tonight. I believe he's driving in an Aston Martin. I think he's actually substituting out Andres Franco, who couldn't make it tonight. And as you can see, the top 5 all within a tenth of one another during qualifying, but in the race, the gaps were a lot bigger, and it is not too much surprise that our championship leader won the race there for Alpine. Joris Kruse, his 5th win of the season out in 8 races, which is super, super impressive. And that definitely helps him out a lot to extend his gap in the championship. The second place was for Tope, 12 points go to him. Then it's Elliot Noren, despite a 5-second penalty, still finishing in P3. Followed by Modesto Mena, one of the reserve drivers, and Daniel Parodi. Matthew Bassett got a 5-second time penalty, which drops him from 5th to 7th. There was also a 5-second time penalty for Harry, which drops him from 8th to 10th, still picking up a point. And as you can see, the remaining drivers at points: Corningolo, Matthew Bassett, Javier Domin, and Andres Franco, despite pole position, only P9 in the race. That takes us to the driver standings. Would you like to take that?
Yeah, we mind it all, heading into driver standings. But right now, it seems like we're heading into short qualifying, so maybe we can come back to the driver standings a bit later. Of course, 14 drivers coming out on track soon enough for 18 minutes to short qualifying ahead of the race itself.
Right, so we'll just get the in-game view. We won't need any of the details. We'll need some telemetry and, of course, the full track map. We're here tonight at the Miami International Autodrome, a track where we've only driven twice in the real world, 2022-2023, with both the same race winner, Max Verstappen. But what we care about here is that there are 19 turns, 5.4 kilometers long, and 3 DRS zones, which is quite big for the race. Some more information about that and where the DRS zones will be later on, because we are going on board with the Butcher, which is Jeremy Galanet, because he is the first one out and the first one will settle up.
Yeah, trying to get to grips with the Miami circuit. Of course, somehow I was missing the audio of the cars. Not something you want to, not a position you want to be in, especially when you're a driver or a commentator for that matter. But yeah, I'm just excited to see where some of these drivers can really find the limit. Of course, we've seen chaos ensue around Miami on multiple occasions. And of course, Sector 3 somehow does end up being a favorite for most of these drivers to lunge down the inside, hopefully sooner than later, but some of them even postpone it all the way down to the final lap of the race. Action-packed race ahead for sure, and I'm excited to see what kind of lap times you see from some of these drivers. How many of them are coming off into 2024 with an advantage? Can Elliot Noren actually close that gap to his rival up in front in the Alpine, who is Joris? Yeah, it's one of question, and I can't wait to see what will unravel in the next 16 minutes to come.
Yeah, it is definitely going to be an important race here tonight. This is round 9. We still have, after this, 2 more races to go. And with the lead that Joris has in the standings, if he is to win tonight and his 2 close competitors score little to 0 points, then he could be crowned as a champion tonight. We're not expecting that, however, so we are going to focus on the race here in Miami and the results that will ensue with it. We're on board with Jeremy Galanet, named the Butcher. I already saw a little joke in the chat. Is that Alfie Butcher's little brother? No, it's just Jeremy Galanet. But for Alpine, he's doing well, leading the constructor standings too, as he takes us through that Miami track. We're going on board with him through the very fast section here, Sector 1, where we saw Charles Leclerc crash out quite hard in qualifying. But Jeremy keeps it tight and heads into Sector 2, which is also our first DRS zone, 29.1, as he makes his way down the back straights. There's, of course, 3 long straights here, while the start-finish straight being the shortest of them, this straight being very long with a bit of twists and turns. And after the somewhat Mickey Mouse section that we have over here, Sector 2, we'll dive into the long straight, a couple more turns of Sector 3. This is that twist and tight section that Jeremy does manage to nail, so it's looking quite good. Just doesn't hit the wall there with a 1 minute and 7 tenths on the clock. He makes his way down the back straight and is heading towards turn 17.
Yeah, Sector 3, beautiful part of this track, as I mentioned before. And you mentioned twisty, turny parts into Sector 3. We've seen on more than one occasion cars really get thrown off of the curbs and forced to really abort their laps. Not the case with the Butcher. 1 minute 26.158 sets the benchmark for now in this 18-minute short qualifying, quickly taken away by his teammate for the day. In the 1 minute 25.625 range goes Joris, our championship leader.
Yeah, with that, we immediately shift focus to his championship competitors, Tope and Elliot Noren, as Matthew Bassett puts in the 3rd time at 26.1. Tope now coming through the final few corners, heading into turn 18 and 19 as more drivers come in, as well as Daniel Parodi who puts in a 25.9. Tope can only do a 26.0. So far, all drivers about 3/10 away from the fastest driver out on track, as Emil Lundell puts in a lap on the board. This is a 1:01.3. This is about 6/10 slower than we saw Jeremy Gallinet was, and he indeed comes into the pits, realizes that this isn't the lap for now. Sparky's still out there on a lap. First sector being quite decent, while Carlman is still warming up a bit, and Simone Violo has invalidated, so we'll stay on board. Having a good look at Sparky and see if he can come a little bit closer to that time that Jeremy Gallinet was able to set, and maybe even challenge pole positions Joris lap time.
Yeah, where he got the exit of sector 2 spot on in comparison to Elliot Norton. That's one of the fumbles he made and found himself heading into the pits. First lap around the track, so not something to worry about, but of course he'd not want to do that again. But it does seem like Sparky seems to have it in the bag. No purple sectors though, so maybe he puts himself in the top 5 at the very least, knowing where his pace is, or falls short ever so much as he comes across the line. Top 10 is all he can do. 9th fastest so far, definitely not his fastest lap, I'd like to think. I think we see him quite higher. Let's not forget, folks, we still got about 5 drivers still yet to set a lap time in this session. Of course, you see a bit of yellows popping up. That's just slow-moving drivers taking their own sweet time, heating up the tires and getting to grips with certain corners around the track.
In the meantime, we're on board with Noel Carman, who set the 6th fastest lap time, as we see Simone Violo once again has invalidated his lap, so I assume he'll be coming in a moment's notice. And apart from that, Elliot Noren and Ariane Sanga are on an L lap. Ariane also being one of the reserve drivers, together with Modesto Mena and Danielle Parodi. But Danielle already showing before in the previous race with a 2nd place in quali and some good points in the race that he's quite up there, and being provisional P2 for the time being shows that he is one of the reserve drivers to keep a close eye on, with results already being quite solid. As we're now further on board with the other drivers, I'm taking a look at Ariane, who's leading the pack, leading the 2nd pack, as Jeremy Gallinet in the Alpine has also exited the pits. He's currently in P4, and I assume more drivers will be coming out in a moment's notice to get ready for their 2nd run. So there'll be 3 runs in total here in this qualifying in Miami.
Yeah, we talk about 2nd runs. It does seem like the Butcher will be the first one to warm himself up to a 2nd run. Again, 4 drivers yet to set a lap time. Just over 10 minutes left to short qualifying. I was about to wonder where Emil Lundell was sitting, and it does seem like he's 7th fastest now. Mind you, his teammate would like him higher up the order, I'm sure, closer to him, once Norton actually sets his first fast lap, I'm sure. Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say, even if it is for the Drivers' Championship. I think the Alpine pair and the Alfa Romeo pair tussling it out around Miami is something we'd love to see.
Yeah, we're now on board with Ariane as he makes his way around the first sector. 29.4 that he has so far, which I believe was about 2/10 slower than Noel Carman was earlier on. Hopefully he'll be able to set a better 2nd sector time and get closer to those top lap times. Remember, man in P4 currently did a 1 minute and then 7/10 for the 2nd sector. Let's see how close Ariane can get to that, or if he can beat it, because after that there's still half a second gap to Joris up in provisional pole. And now rounds off the last corner of that sector. We see that he's currently on a 1:01.2. It's about 5:10 slower, so it looks like he is on for a lap of about a 1:26.6 or 26.7, which will put him quite close to Thomas Kokeni and Sparky around P9, P10. Still making his way. A little bit of a slide there. I believe we saw Valtteri Bottas do that in the race last year round. And when he comes round, we see him indeed set, well, a little bit quicker actually, 1:26.5 highs, but that at least puts him ahead of Thomas Kokeni.
Yeah, I'm rather curious to see how Simone Violo does as well, but Elliot Norton yet again aborting his lap and heading into the pits. It did seem like he got the exit of sector 2 much better this time around. Unusual to see him go in, but it wasn't good enough on his books, I'm afraid. But yeah, as it stands, we still got 3 drivers yet to set a lap time. 2 of them formidable, and as I say that, I've been on board the Butcher, and he's sent himself into a spin through the twisty turny parts mentioned before at the exit of Sector 2. We have probably not our first casualty of sorts out there, but definitely fumbles like that in the race isn't going to be pretty, let alone for the driver who's involved in the spin, but for drivers who are oncoming.
Yeah, I was just on board with him as well, so we could perfectly see what was happening there. As in the meantime, Daniel Parodi has set the fastest first sector at 28.9, purple sector for him as he heads into Sector 2. This is the sector where we just saw Jeremy Gallané make that mistake. Remember, he was also up about 2/10 on his own lap time, which would have been enough for provisional P2 as Daniel invalidates as well through the twisty section, which means he won't be beating that lap time and it's going to come in. Emil Lundell in the meantime has retired. I think he's hit something as we now go on board with Tope, who is on a 29.1 in the first sector. Still trying to keep that speed up as he goes through the tricky section. Does keep it tight, does keep it clean. Still no track limits for him. He's 3,000 slower. Remember, in the first sector, 8,000 slower. And now after the second sector, 3,000 slower. So it shows how much Tope is already pushing. And also shows that likely is not too much more in the bag for him in order to improve.
Yeah, I love seeing the drivers give it everything out on track, especially in qualifying pretty early on. Unfortunately for Emil Lundell, he did crash out at the exit of Sector 2, so that is the first retirement in that part of the track. But Tope comes across the line, still third fastest. He stays third fastest, not too far behind of Parodi and Joris up ahead.
I think we have Simone Viola coming across the line indeed. He comes across in P9, but Matthew Bassett is on it for an improvement. This could be a provisional P3, or is it going to be more? It will be a provisional P3. Comes round in a 1:26.041. Provisional P3 just ahead of Tope, but still a little over 10th behind Daniel Parodi and 4/10 behind the fastest driver out there on track. And just as I say that, Joris sits at purple second sector. It's about a 10th quicker than his own lap time. He's already showing all of his competitors he can go around 3/10 quicker. And he shows, hey, I can still go quicker than that. I still have more in me. So let's go on board with him as he makes his way around turn 17, diving into 18 and taking the right-hander into 19. That is the final corner. Keeps it close, and that's just a bit quicker. A 1:25.579. That is 3.5 tenths almost to Daniel Parodi, and that is going to be a tough nut to crack.
Oh, surely enough. Joris seems like he is in stellar form. He's here to win and win it all. But for now, for starters, he needs to win Miami. He needs to win the qualifying session, which means putting himself on the top spot of the grid, pole position. And it does seem like it's headed his way regardless. But for now, we've still got about 5 minutes or so, just over 5 minutes short qualifying left. So we're going to see those last bunch of runs from all of these drivers. Mind you, Elliot Norton still hasn't set a lap time. Modesto as well. Don't know if he's got a quali ban of sorts. I've not seen him out on track yet. But hopefully we get to see some fast laps from the drivers at the back.
Yeah, we were just looking at Elliot Norton as he invalidated through the twisty Sector 2. So he will have to come in and try and go for it again if there is enough time to do so. Or he will have to continue. But he is coming in. There's about 4.5 minutes left, so he still has time to go for it. That is the good news for him. And in the meantime, Sparky has invalidated too. Noel Carmen is the only man on a flyer for a time being. Is a little bit slower in the first sector, but still has enough time to try and make up a little bit and go a bit quicker. Although he's already running low on ERS. This track quite heavy for the ERS usage, but there will be a lot to recharge here in that second sector. It was about 6% now coming through. Actually doesn't recharge all that much. Goes from 6 to 13, and that's all. And currently is about 3.5 tenths slower, so this looks like a lap that Noel will be aborting. Perhaps indeed not enough ERS left to really go for that lap. The other driver on a quick lap is Aryan Sanga, who's currently about 2 tenths quicker in the first sector, so he should be able to at least get much, much closer to his teammate, Simone Viola.
Yeah, Noah Carmen's car looks like it's all over the place. And it's unusual that he finds himself always alone out on track in this little minute or so where we find all the drivers in the pits and just him, the lone warrior around the race circuit. But Aryan Sanga, as a reserve driver, you want to be ahead of your teammate for the day, I'd like to think. And Simone Violo is quite the teammate to beat, let alone in the race. Come the race itself, but in qualifying it does seem like he's not too far behind, just about 2 tenths behind Violo, but across the line he shall not come as he heads into the pits, and that's probably qualifying end for Aryan Sanga, depending on whether he can make it out the pits, which is highly unlikely.
Yeah, he'll definitely have to hurry up a lot and leave the pits within a minute or so if he still wants to make it. But we saw him make a mistake coming out of turn 17, clipping the wall there. Did not invalidate, but definitely cost him some lap time there, and that would result in no position improvement, which is likely why he aborted. There's currently 2 drivers out on track, Elliot Norton and Sparky. Sparky in P9, Elliot Norton without a lap time yet. Out of those, it is Sparky leading the pack, but they're going for their final laps. Top 8 now, Joas Kuza, Daniel Parodi, and Jeremy Gallinet in P5 also coming out. So more and more drivers now leaving the pit lane. I think most of our drivers are going to get ready for their final run. In the meantime, in the chat, let us know who you think is going to win this qualifying and put his car on pole. If that is going to be Joris, as it looks like now, or if someone is going to catch him off guard. What do you think, Zataxter?
Well, I usually, put my bets or predictions on Elliot Norton when it's a face-off between Elliot and Joris. But I think this is the first time we're seeing Elliot Norton actually delay his fast lap all the way to the end of the last couple of minutes of short qualifying. So I don't know how comfortable, Elliot Norton himself is right there, being in that kind of position, or even me putting any kind of prediction in the favor of Elliot Norton. But if it's one driver who can, it's probably Norton.
It for sure will be a tall order for him because he cannot invalidate, has to put out a clean lap, has to put up a fast lap as well. I think if there's any driver, at least I've seen so far, that can potentially contest Joris, it must be Daniele, who did set the purple first sector, so definitely can go around quicker there than Joris, but will need to put in a stellar second sector if he wants to get any closer than that 3.5 tenths he's currently down. We're now going to watch Sparky as he gets into his final lap. And after that, it will be Elliot Norton, so the driver on your radar that we're going to jump into. But I think tonight, here in qualifying around Miami, it'll be very tough to beat Joris.
Yeah, surely enough. All of these drivers going out for one last hurrah. In qualifying, does seem like Modesto has come out for his fast lap as well, so no quali ban on his front. There's all to play for about 13 drivers or 12 drivers who are out on their out lap and probably will be able to set a fast lap at the tail end of this qualifying ahead at the Miami GP race here in PSGL F4 in 2024. So of course all eyes on Joris perhaps, because he'll be the first one to pull off a lap of sorts in his favor, but Elliot Norton was the first out of the pits, so riding on board him is more appropriate.
Yeah, Elliot Norton currently second in line as Sparky comes round second sector, 2.5 tenths up, so that looks to be about a 26.0, and that would give him a jump from P9 to P3. So Sparky on a really good lap. Definitely looks to be improving, hasn't invalidated, and it's very hard to invalidate around the final few corners, so I don't think he'll be doing that, as he almost clips the barrier into turn 17, but how quick can he go? Sparky comes round and puts it at 29.9, that is a provisional P3. Let's quickly jump to Elliot Norton, who has invalidated. No fast lap time from Elliot, in fact, no lap time at all. So that's some horrible news for the driver on your radar. So we're now on board with Joris. He was already the quickest. He's going to come in. Daniel Parodi is still out on track. Can he go quicker though?
If it's anyone, it's got to be Parodi. It does seem like we got an incident out on track at the line. One of the cars just parked on the right-hand side of the track, but it does seem like Parodi doesn't go quicker, stays second fastest. So will we see an unlikely competitor up in the front row, or perhaps the second row? It doesn't seem like it. Of course, Noah Carmen a 10th quicker as he exits sector 3 by the looks of it. Can he jump a couple positions? No, he will not. What about the Ferrari pair? Will we see a left field result? Violo puts himself in the top 5 after all. He finds himself 5th fastest, starting on the 5th grid box ahead of the race. Aryan Sanga heads into the pits. So folks, that's Joris in pole position at the Miami GP race.
Yeah, at the end it did get a lot closer than the 3.5 tenths that Joris had. Danielle getting within about a tenth from Joris, but it already shows how quick Joris was out there on track. His first lap time would have been enough for pole position already, and with that second lap time, a gap of 1:17.117, quite a big gap in F1 Esports. In second place, we find Daniel Parodi, reserve driver, followed by Tommaso Kenny. Great qualifying lap from him. Puts his Mercedes just ahead of Tope in P4. Then it's Simone Violo and Sparky, the only 6 drivers beating the 1:26 mark. And then followed by Matthew Bassett in P6. In P8, we find Jeremy Gallané. Then it is Noel Carmen, Kuba Trzeziak, Emil Lundell, and Aryan Sangan, and 2 drivers without a lap time, Elliot Noren and Modesto Mena, who had some invalidations going out there on track. So 14 drivers that we'll have for tonight. But we're quickly going to jump to an intermission before we head into the race. And we are back for the Miami race, the full race that we're going to have out here tonight at PSGL PCF4 with, as we saw, a pole position for Joris Kruse. A huge shout in the chat for Jack for mentioning that Joris would have been top 4 in F2 even with that lap time, and that just shows how great he is. But then again, out of 8 races, he's won 5 so far, and that is quite an impressive feat.
Yeah, surely enough, if he keeps it going, we're not going to be able to see him in F4 anymore. We're going to see him higher and higher, and that's exactly what a sim racing driver should be aiming for when they come into PSGL, right? Improve and keep going higher up the ladder to make it up, probably even into challenges of F1 esports and beyond even. So it gets me all excited every time one of these drivers are as quick as Joris is. And hopefully Elliot Noren, he's got quite the feat ahead for him, but there you go, race start.
Yeah, and 5 lights are on, and we are on our way with a good start on the inside for Daniel Parodi, but I don't think it's just enough to beat Joris into lap 1. He's gonna try and go for it into turn 1, but won't go around side it. A good start from Tope as Tommaso Kenny drops 2 positions. Further down the field, we see Modesto Mena picking up 2 positions. Both of the Alfa Romeos have been passed. And as we get the extra information out there on the screen for you, we can see the best start was indeed from Modesto Mena. Also a position picked up by Aryan Sanga, now one from Noel Carmen and Jeremy Gallané too, as well as Simone Violo and Tope. But the top 2 still unchanged. Joris leads the pack. 3 tenths behind him is Daniel Parodi.
And in the midfield, however, is getting real spicy. All the drivers getting their elbows out, pretty much lining themselves up alongside each other. Down the inside goes the Haas and sends a Ferrari into a spin. If I caught that right, could have been a Haas if I'm not wrong. But wheel to wheel goes Noel Carmen, Matthew Bassett. Matthew Bassett comes out a winner there as they go through the twisty, turny parts. Oh, the AlphaTauri into the wall, loses an end plate. And that's going to cost him not just time, but probably positions in the laps to come.
Yeah, I saw Noel Carmen drop a little bit after that incident. Elliot Noren so far has gained the most positions because of it. 4 positions gained. We saw indeed a Ferrari, as you mentioned, being pushed into a spin. That was Aryan Sanga, who's been dropped down to the back of the order. There's a lot of drivers. Oh, look at that. Heading, I think, yeah, that's heading into the pits. That is Matthew Bassett. Looks like there has been some damage due to that contact in Sector 2 that you mentioned. As in the meantime, we see Sparky and Tommaso Kenny fighting for P5. Tommaso Kenny just staying ahead, but not by much. And look at that, the inside. We see Jeremy Gallané, and he's gotten past Sparky. So, very hard for him to keep it on track there, does keep it on track, but he was fighting for P5 with Tomas Kokeni, but just before you know it, you're dropped a position and you're behind now in P7 behind Jeremy Gallinay. Of course, it's a bit tough for us because we have to call out their real names and a couple of drivers are driving with different names. So just to make it simple for you, the Butcher, that is Jeremy Gallinay, and Sasha, that is Sparky. All the other drivers are driving with their own names to keep it simple. 3 drivers that we have out here on the grid tonight are reserve drivers. Those are Danielle Parodi, and then we have Modesto Mena and Aryan Sung, as we see a DNF for Matthew Bassett, who's lost it in the Charles Leclerc corner.
I'm surprised he came out of the pits and lost it the way he did. Probably not enough heat in those tires. Regardless, it does seem the action continues in the midfield. Of course, we got to see Jeremy make that opportunistic move, but it does seem like the gaps are now extending. Mind you, all the drivers are on hard tires, so no varying strategies of sorts. Battle at the back between Aryan Sanga and Modesto as they go wheel to wheel as they line up along the main straight. It's the Ferrari ahead of Modesto. Modesto's going to try and come back for that position. Probably not. We'll have to settle P13. So that's a move well done.
And in the meantime, we see Thomas Kokeni almost putting it in the wall after turn 3. Loses the car, and because of the ghosting applied, it means that Jeremy Gallinay could easily get by. It's now in P5 out of Tomas Kokeni in P6, and Sparky will definitely be eyeing that position of Tomas Kokeni. Might have a little bit of dirty tires there. We have DRS enabled, and that is going to be enabled in a moment's notice. Is it going to be enough for Sparky to come by? Because also ahead, Tomas Kokeni has DRS activated, so I don't think it's too easy to pass, and indeed, he is too far back to really go for a move here. But we see the drivers lining up and trying to get closer to one another. We currently have 2 DRS trains. We have a DRS train for the top 4, so those are Jois, Daniela Toppe, and Simone, and then behind that, Jeremy Gallinay is at 1.1. Now the other drivers are in AQ, so P5 all the way up until P13 in the second DRS train. But it looks like Jeremy Gallinay is trying to close that gap to Simone, and if he does succeed to do so, he'll be in one train once again, as Sasha, also known as Sparky, is trying to go for a move on Tomas Kokeni, as Kuba Treziak has now dropped down the order, and that looks to be a little bit more serious, not just a spin.
Yeah, just a spin around the exit of Sector 3 could have been contact with another driver. Regardless, onwards go the race. Emil Lundell seemingly falling short, missing an end plate even. So that's an incident with another driver out on track. I wonder if it's Modesto or Aryan Sanga, but it has cost Emil Lundell an end plate, and he will surely enough be heading into the pits after this one. Mind you, up ahead though, Jeremy, he's made up 3 positions since the start, but it's come at a cost. He's all down to 6% in ERS. He might just end up being a sitting duck come the next couple of laps for Tamas and Sasha to pick off one by one. But of course, it's lap number 4, folks. Too early to call anything. The race has barely begun.
The race has barely begun, but in the meantime, Jeremy Gallinay is approaching DRS window of Simone Viola. We saw when we were on board just a moment ago with Danielle Parodi that he did hold back and that he does not want to pass yours. But then again, DRS is so powerful here. 2 very long DRS zones, 1 moderately long zone. So you really don't want to be the driver driving up ahead. We even see him pulling out of the dirty air just to make sure that he doesn't go by. And even though it would be an easy pass, deciding to conserve a bit of fuel, conserve tire life, so he can use that to his advantage early on. Because as you mentioned before, all the drivers out there on hards, so without safety cars, they'll be swapping for mediums later on, and that's going to be it, as Emil Lundell, however, does come into the pits. So let's see what Emil is going to do.
Yeah, but battles in the midfield, that's between Sasha and Tamas, wheel banging quite a bit as they go through Sector 1. But the Mercedes of Tamas gets the edge and holds on to P6 for now. Incredibly aggressive move coming through from Sasha around the outside, but fair, but fair. Might have just cost him another position as the rear kicks out. No, Carmen picks it up, picks up P7 and says thank you very much.
Yeah, we saw Sparky go a little bit wide there at the end of the first sector, and that caused Noel Carmen to come by. But look at that, Noel has the DRS now. Will he want to come by Tomas Kokeni? He does have the opportunity to do so, but he is not going to go for the late lunge. All the other drivers are starting to line up Also, Aryan Sanga very close to Modesto Mena now. Them two are now in P10 and 11. Takuba Traziak, of course, was, went off track earlier on. Not sure if that was due to contact or fault of his own. And then Malone Dow, who's made a pit stop, which was, of course, to replace his front wing and also switch to the mediums. He now has both of his front wing and plates. At least Elliot Norton's car is all A-OK. As we now see a big fight emerge for P6 as... Oh, that is a little bit of contact, but no crash involving around that, so that is good news. But it does mean that Sparky is our new P6, followed by Noel Carmen. Elliot Norton has gone by Tomas Kokeni, and after his great qualifying, which put him in P3, he is now all the way down to P9.
Trying to go for that gap, Tomas. Struggling out there now, down to P9. 6 positions lost since the start. There were 3 abreast on the Sector 3 straight. Unfortunate to see it not go in the favor of Tomas. He does find himself down in P9, but Elliot Norton seems to be steaming ahead. He's up 5 positions, ERS in his favor as well. He might just be able to pick off 2 more in the process as Noah Carmen edges closer and closer to Sparky up ahead.
Yeah, and he has DRS now as well, so one can only imagine that Noel is going to... No, Noel decides against it, so does not want to make the move despite the gap up ahead of Sparky being about 2.2 seconds. But we see that Jeremy Gallané, also known as the Butcher in P5, has managed to close that DRS gap to Simone Violo, so that is good news for him. And it also means that our top 5 is in all but a second. So that is great to see as well, and that means that we're going to have some amazing fighting going on towards the end of the race. Currently in lap 6 out of 29. A lot of action still to happen, but the action... Oh no, there's a spin for Simone Violo, as I was just about to say the action is going to calm down. But of course, this wasn't even the caster's curse. Like, I have to say something in order to evoke a curse, but just the mere fact of thinking about it already means that Simone has been sent into a spin. I think he spawned on his own there, but that drops him down to P11. And that means that his hopes of potentially getting a race win here have been thrown out of the window.
Well, never say never, but he finds himself right behind Aryan Sanga, who's been trying to get ahead of Modesto for the longest time, but Thomas evidently lost that position to Modesto instead. I'm surprised Violo sent himself into a spin, but goes to show anything can unravel around Miami. We're on lap number 7, folks. It's still very early times into the race. We can see the battles unravel, and that's Noah Carmen around the outside, making the move on Sparky, picking up P5. Modesto on Elliot Norton. They go wheel to wheel as they go through Sector 2. They're going to stay wheel to wheel as well. Modesto hanging on somehow to the Alfa Romeo driver's space through the twisty and turny part, staying wheel to wheel. I've never seen that before, Mitt. I don't know about you.
I haven't seen that. Oh, that is into the wall for Tomas Kokeni, but not too much damage as a result. That could have been an easy DNF, but does keep it on track. However, it has dropped to P11, but some great fighting coming out between Elliot Norton and Modesto Mena, who now find themselves in P7 and 8 after starting all the way at the back of the grid, not being able to set a lap in qualifying due to the track limits that they picked up. In the meantime, also a penalty picked up for corner cutting by Jeremy Gallané, who's still in P4. And yeah, Aryan Sanga now has gone past Tomas Kokeni, who's still staying out, so I guess he does not have damage to his car. The gap up ahead to the top 4 is starting to increase, about 3 seconds towards Noel Carmen, but I think Sparky is right on Noel's feet, and things should be aiming to go for an overtake in Sector 2 here.
Yeah, things went from bad to worse for Thomas, finds himself P11, but here comes the moves after all. Noah Carmen loses not 1 but seemingly 2 positions, finds her down to P7, so Sparky rather got that relatively easily than he had hoped for, I'm pretty sure, but a huge DRS train nonetheless. They're not too far behind. That's a swap for the race lead, however, perhaps a bit too early and in the part of the track I didn't expect. Well before Sector 3, it did seem like Parodi was breathing or probably peeking down the inside, trying to see if there was a move to be made, and for a moment we had Parodi in the race lead, but Joris continues to be the race leader for now.
continues to be the race leader for now, but I think Daniel wants to get by and indeed splits that car side by side, and he is gone. He is up ahead in P1 now, reserve driver leading the race for Aston Martin. A really good effort by him so far as we see Tope holding off Jeremy Gallanet, the other Alpine driver, in P4. Remember, Alpine also leading the constructors standings, so if they keep it as they have now, they're looking very good to not only picking up the driver's title with Joris, but also picking up the constructor title for Alpine. Further down the line, we still see the gap between Elliot Noren, Sparky, and Noah Carmen, and also Modesta Mann and Simone Violo being very close. So 5 towards 9 all fighting for that position. And yeah, of course, the top 4 fighting for first place. Although it looks like Jeremy Gallanet started to back out a little bit, about 9/10 away with Sal's DRS. And we should go on board with Tope because he's super close to Joris and wants to get by.
Yeah, being on the gearbox of Joris pretty much. Peeking around the outside, Joris himself peeking down the inside of Daniel Parodi, who's going to be able to pull off a move. He does get alongside him, but isn't able to pull off the move. Tope is going to settle for P3, but of course Sector 3, folks. Sector 3 is where you make a move, especially when you're running in the top 3. That fumble around the twists and turns you see at the exit of Sector 2, that's where you catch another driver snoozing, and it does seem Tope might have just been snoozing ever so much. Mind you, lately Joris hasn't been using ERS one bit. He's staying P2 for now. He does close into Parodi. Tope seems too far behind for a move, and Joris is going to settle for P2. He's just along for the ride for now. It's only lap number 9. We got about 20 laps left in this race, and Emil Lundell becomes the second person in this race to get a 3-second time penalty.
Yeah, in the meantime, we see overtakes happen as Noel Carmen is back into P5. Sparky now fighting with on the outside Elliot Noren, but just keeps it up ahead heading into turn 1. Already in lap 10, folks. Almost third race distance as we are coming around this Miami International Autodrome circuit. Just a little bit of information about it. It's located near the Hard Rock Stadium that we can see just around the pit building, so towards the right of the pit building and right of the start-finish straight, you find it there. Is also located in the Miami Gardens, which is home to the Miami Dolphins National Football League team. But of course, we're not there for that. We're here for the F1 races, and we're here for Sparky applying pressure onto Noel Carmen, who has about no ERS left. What is... Whoa! Almost slamming into the back of Noel Carmen. Little bit of desync and lag happening there as well. As we look up ahead, Joris is back into the lead and Tope is now second. Looks like they've both gotten past Daniel Parodi.
Yeah, a cheeky little pass there by Tope, get along for the ride with Joris as he made the pass on Parodi. So Parodi, things went from good to bad for him. But it's lap number 10, anything can unravel. Of course, the action in the midfield continues. I mean, Elliot Noren, Modesto in the mix. Sparky and Noah Carmen, despite some of them trailing on ERS, struggling on ERS in comparison to the other, still unable to make the pass, but a pass it does come through for the Alfa Romeo driver of Elliot Noren. Gets alongside, gets ahead of Sparky, but he can he keep it? Can he keep it ahead of the AlphaTauri driver? Mind you, Sparky's breathing down the gearbox of the Alfa Romeo. He's been breathing down the gearbox of the McLaren earlier. It does seem like he's fallen short. But on lap number 11, the next competitor ahead is Elliot Noren.
Yeah, with Sparky now falling back a little bit, looks like Elliot Noren's way up, and it's only up for him as he's now getting closer to Noel Carmen. Mind you, if he overtakes him, then the gap is going to be quite big, 3.4 seconds, but with a 5-second time penalty for Jeremy Gallanet, that would mean that he technically is in P5 already, could go for P4, but still going to stay behind Noel Carmen for the time being. He knows they can save a little bit of tire life staying behind there now, and there's no way to really make up for that gap, at least for the time being. I think it is better to stay behind, at least for now, and hopefully with the pit stop sequence going a little bit earlier will be enough to close that gap and be there in for the fight. Towards the end of the race. Still be a few more laps until we head into half race distance. It looks like order is staying put as it is. And we have so far only two drivers from the same team in the top 10. Those are your Alpine drivers in P1 and P4, and the Ferrari pairing of Simone Viola, Arian Sanga, P9, P10.
Yeah, Sparky got as close as he could to the gearbox of the Alfa Romeo up ahead as he exited Sector 3. Seemingly doesn't have the pace to keep it there as he goes through Sector 1. Pretty significant gap for him. Now can't really make a move or not in sights, but within DRS range, within half a second, so anything can happen pretty much. Modesto, I must say, we've been probably not proven wrong, but I've been thoroughly surprised with Modesto's pace. Despite, trailing in the qualifying session, in the race, 6 positions up to lap number 12. It's what you want to see from some of these drivers starting at the back of the pack.
Yeah, and back at the pack we are right now with Tomas Kokeni, who's getting closer to Arian Sanga up ahead in P10. But Tomas not being able to get close enough to go for the overtake in Sector 2. Perhaps in Sector 3 he can get close enough and go for that move. Is currently about half a second away, and that might be just a little bit too much. Even 6/10 as he comes around turn 16, heads toward turn 17. We're now on board with him. He's not using any ERS. He's not trying to slipstream here. He's just trying to stay within that 1 second gap, and does get about 3/10 slower. But we see that he's braking early as well, which means he's trying to keep that tire life A-okay and is not really pushing for an overtake onto Arian Sanga. Up ahead though, the gaps are a lot closer. We'll once again go towards the fight for P5 on board with Elliot Noren, so we can see behind him Sparky and Modesto Mena and Simone Viola too, quite in his camera angle. And then in a couple of laps we'll be moving once again to the front of the pack, with the top 4 still fighting for the race lead, with yours still leading as we're now in lap 13.
Yeah, I think Parodi is really biding his steps pretty much ahead of the halfway mark of the race and trying to take it relatively slow. Perhaps making a pass is not what he needs. At least making a pass on Tope is something he really needs. He does have a full tank of ERS, an advantage in comparison to Tope. Regardless, the action of course is unraveling in the midfield, and you can see how close these 5 drivers, or perhaps even 6 drivers are. Seemingly just 5 drivers it is, led by Noel Carmen, Elliot Noren, Sparky, Modesto and Simone Viola. I mean, it's anyone's guess who's going to come out on top in this battle as they head into Sector 3.
It surely is, but yeah, with the standings as they look at right now, if it stays put, that means that in the championship fight we'll be down to only 3 drivers as Emil Lundell picks up a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Joris Tope and Elliot Noren are the drivers in the top 3. After this race, the gap towards all the other drivers and Joris will be more than 33 points, which means, more than 32 points, which is... No, 34 with fast lap is what they need to get. So after this, if it's more than 34 points, then it will be pretty much GG for all the other drivers. And yeah, with yours being in the lead of the race, it will be so, as the gap to P4, I think, was already about 36 points. So it'll be very hard to still overtake him then. In fact, impossible for anyone but Tope and Elliot Noren. So Elliot definitely has to move up a little bit closer, and I think Tope really is in the key position to try and contest yours for a race win, and will have to do so. Otherwise, it is going to be a smooth race for yours up in Silverstone next week. And if he keeps a big enough lead, can crown himself the winner of the PC F4.
Well, it's almost like Elliot Noren heard you say that, because he made that move on Noel Carmen look pretty easy, and he's up in a P5. So that was the significant leader of the bunch in the midfield at the very least. He's up 8 positions now, Elliot Noren. He's got a ginormous gap to close in on the Busher. Perhaps the safety car will play into his favor with that 5-second gap to close in to Jeremy in P4. But let's not discount anything. It's Elliot Noren after all. He's made up 8 positions. Who's to say he can't make up a 5-second gap?
Yeah, and that 5-second gap will also be cut by 5 seconds because of that penalty, as we see a couple of drivers go side by side. Now diving into the inside is Modesto Mena on the inside of Sparky. And that is almost enough to go for the overtake. They're now side by side. Just keeps it on track. Modesto Mena with the overtake onto Sparky. Sparky been pushed back towards P8, and Elliot Noren has been overtaken by Noel Carmen. So a lot of overtakes now happening in the midfield, and I think we're going to see more moves being made with Tope being so much closer to Joris now. I think the drivers are gearing up for the end of their first stint, and we're heading into pit stop soon, because here comes Tope. He does not go for the overtake, decides against it, so perhaps there's just another lap of life in those tires.
Perhaps, just perhaps, Elliot Noren comes back for that position of his, makes that pass, and might have just gotten rear-ended there, Haas, by the AlphaTauri of Sparky. So Sparky getting a bit impatient as he continues this race here on lap number 15, folks. Pretty much the halfway mark of this race. We got Joris leading this race ahead of Tope and Daniel Parodi up in front. But of course, the action is in the midfield. They're getting their elbows out pretty well, but Tope makes that pass onto Joris. It's almost like the drivers can hear us at this point, given their moves. Noah Carmen comes back for his position against Elliot Noren, positions that car perfectly to ensure he holds on to P5 for now. I think there was a bit of contact as well in the midfield, but Elliot Noren found trailing behind the McLaren driver yet again.
Yeah, in the meantime, our race leader just a moment before Tope did overtake Joris up just before turn 17, now came into the pits for the mediums, and I think we're going to see almost all drivers switch to the mediums. We're going to make sure that the tires will be out there. But look at that. Simone came in 2 laps earlier, and even though he was quite far behind, the gap to Tope is now 3.3 seconds. So Simone definitely has been able to clear a bit of a gap and is indeed 5 seconds ahead of Sparky, who he was behind earlier on. So a very good strategy by Simone, stopping 2 laps early, but I think the drivers up ahead will be coming in now after Tope must have triggered that pit stop sequence. Noel Carmen then under heavy pressure by Elliot Noren and Modesto Mena. They're still staying put behind one another, but I think down the back straight, maybe Daniel Parodi will want to make a move as well. But what are the Alpine drivers going to do? Because they can't come in both this lap. Only one of the drivers can come in. Is that going to be Jeremy in P3, or will it be Joris in P1? Regardless, one of them has to come in now, and the other driver will have a little bit of a gap to clear towards Tope when they come out of the pit stop, as we see that Modesto Mena has gone past both drivers and is now in P4, and it looks like Joris is staying out, so he wants to fresh his tires towards the end of the race.
Yeah, and Modesto in. It is for him. He makes that double pass, but he says he needs to make that pit stop. Joris stays out, of course, as you mentioned. So does Noah Carmen, Elliot Noren to follow suit, and Tamas Kokeni as well. So that makes it 4 drivers out on hard tires, with the rest of the bunch out on medium tires. Simone Violo after that pit stop, and stellar 3 laps on the mediums, finds himself in thickness in the midfield, up in P7.
But look at that gap that Tope has gone. That's 3 seconds towards Daniel Parodi, and Daniel was only half a second behind Joris. Tope managed to get like a 3-second gap in that outlap, and that means when Joris is going to come out, he won't just fall behind Daniel, he will fall behind Simone as well. And likely, well, the other drivers are still out there on track, but that means that the net position for Joris is likely going to be P4, and we'll have quite a few gaps to close. First to Simone, then to Danielle, and then to Tope. So things are looking good for Tope, seemingly making the pit stop at the right moment. And I'm going to be super curious where the other drivers are going to come out. So we stay on board with Tope, as Joris, Noel, Elliot, and Tomas Kokeni definitely will be coming in at the end of this lap. Likely will go for mediums as well, but where out on track will they come?
Oh, Joris stays out. Joris stays out. No, Carmen is rounding around the exit of Sector 3. Also stays out. So does Elliot Noren. And Tamas decides to do the same. So no change in the top order for now. In the midfield, however, things are getting heated as it was once before. Sparky breathing down the gearbox of Aryan Sangha, who cheekily picked up that position earlier on. Jeremy not too far behind of the AlphaTauri driver either. And Modesto wants positions back as it was the case as he head into the pits. So the midfield action has made its way to the back of the pack, seemingly behind the 2 Ferraris.
I think at this point the lead 4 drivers have realized if we come in right now, we are going to lose a lot of track position. Perhaps it's better to stay out just an extra few laps and then go for the soft tires. Tope, in the meantime, has already cleared Thomas Kokeni, who still's got to come in. Elliot Noren's gone past Noel Carman. So that's another overtake for him. And we have yellow in Sector 2. That is Noel Carman, I think, with a little bit of a spin. He's going to drop quite a bit of time. Almost 4 wide, heading into the end of that long back straight. And the drivers do keep it clean for now. But this is going to be a tight sector. Can they keep it clean here? This is oh so close. Almost being pushed off. Arian almost losing it there, but they don't put each other in the wall. This is amazing fighting here at PCF4, and our race leader is now into the pits. Let's quickly go to him.
Oh, that was incredibly close at the back of the pack. 4 cars battling it out that way. That's what we're here for. But that's the fresh set of mediums coming on. Not just for Joris, but for Elliot Noren, who's competing with him for the championship title. Of course, Tope takes the lead of the race ahead of Parodi. And Simone Violo somehow puts himself running in the podium positions.
Yeah, but look at that gap now. Joris comes out on track 2.5 seconds behind Simone. Simone 2 seconds behind Danielle. And Danielle 2 seconds behind Tope. That is quite the gap to clear. 6.5 seconds separating Joris between him and P1. So definitely the pit stop strategy so far not working out for him. Has to cover quite a bit of ground here. But the good news for him is that the gap behind him is over 2 seconds as well, so he definitely doesn't have to worry about any of the other drivers out there on track. In the meantime, Elliot Noren, Noel Carman came out behind Kuba Traziek, so they now find themselves in P10 and 11. Tomasko Kenny in P12, so them drivers definitely have some gaps to clear as well, and hopefully some drivers to clear later on. But I'm very curious to see what is going to be happening up ahead. We see Danielle being a bit quicker than Tope now. That gap was over 2 seconds before. Now it's 1.6 as Tomasko Kenny picks up a 3-second time penalty. We also see that Jeremy Gallané has put in his 5-second, served his 5-second penalty, and is still in P5, so that is good news for him. Didn't lose too much in the pit stop sequence. Joris has made up 4 tenths now in this first lap, but we'll have to make up quite a bit more if he still wants to contest for that race win.
Yeah, everything seemingly is working towards some of these drivers' interests, Jeremy being one of them. Of course, with that time penalty out of the way, he'll be clear of ensuring the race ends in his favor. At the very least, he can battle it out on track. Of course, midfield battles continue. Modesto and Sparky, both drivers, had an opportunistic moment there as they headed into the pits the way that they did. Their rivals were fighting it out alongside them in the midfield, find themselves all the way beyond P10 and P11. That's Noren and Carman. So yeah, Sparky, Modesto, they're going to be going toe-to-toe with each other, with Jeremy up in front. Of course, Sparky gets as close as he can to Jeremy. Not close enough, though.
Yeah, and this is one of the few fights that we can follow out there on track for the time being. So Jeremy, followed by Sparky, Modesto Mena, and Aryan Sanga. The gap then towards Kuben Elliott and Noel is too big, but Noel and Tomasko Kenny also within DRS range of one another. Seemingly Tomasko Kenny being able to go for an overtake in a moment's notice. But yeah, the fight for P5 is on. Joris, in the meantime, has cleaned up that 2-second gap. Remember, he came out 2.5 seconds behind Simone Violo, and he doesn't even wait to the start-finish line. It's taking him less than 2 laps to clear the driver up ahead of him. That was a 2.5 second gap. That is some amazing pace, but I think Simone has made some mistakes, because the gap to the leader for Joris was 6.5 seconds. That is now 5.7. So when he gained 8 tenths on the leader, he gained 2.5 seconds on Simone. So it looks like Simone is not able to keep up. But yeah, that tire life definitely a lot higher. But how much will that tire life advantage play into Joris's hands? Still a massive gap to still mount. But look at that. Now 5.5 seconds. Has cleared about a second in 2.5 laps. But with still 8 to go, it might be too much for him to still cover.
Yeah, he is on a roll like no other. Back in the midfield, Sparky gets alongside, of course, of Jeremy and Modesto in the mix, 3 abreast as they head through the twists and turns And once again, they stay wheel to wheel. Somehow, Jeremy has nose in front. The front wing up in front and holds on to P5 barely. And Sparky seemingly being put out of place. And Modesto says, thank you very much. Finds himself up in a P6. And he's the car. He's the driver closing in on the gearbox of the Butcher up in front on Jeremy.
It looks like more and more drivers are starting to lose pace because also up ahead, Daniel Parodi has gone within DRS range of Tope. That gap was about 2 seconds as well. Joris now has closed the gap to 4.8. This was almost a second more at the start of the previous lap. So Joris definitely covering a lot of ground. But what can Daniel do? How much closer can he get to Tope? And can he even go for an overtake already? I think he wants to stay put. But if he stays put, and if he doesn't keep up the pace and sort of go for a bit of leapfrogging, overtake him the one lap and let Tope overtake him the other lap, that might mean that Joris can get within the fight. And if Joris gets within the fight with those fresher tires, it's going to be very hard for both of these drivers to keep him behind. So what will the strategy be? What is Daniel going to do? We are on board with Daniel and he decides not to go for it. This means Joris can get closer and that could be a very dangerous strategy towards the end.
Yeah, surely enough. And when we talk about dangerous strategy, let's not forget both drivers, Tope and Daniel, are pretty much equal in terms of ERS, so there's no real advantage swinging on either one of the drivers' ends. So Joris closing in that gap, half a second closed in already. He's 3.5 seconds off of Daniel Parodi. So clearly, if Parodi continues to lack the pace or even take too long to make the pass he's already made, of course, onto Tope, it might just spell trouble for the top two, because Joris is coming, Joris is steaming and coming, and they might just want to be attentive about that particular driver who also happens to be the championship leader.
And in the meantime, we see that Simone is starting to drop down the order now. It looks like his early pit stop is starting to bite him in the butt. He's already in P4, but within DRS range, Modesto Mena and also Jeremy Gallonay and Aryan, or no, not Aryan Sanga, but Sparky in P7. Looks like Aryan's made a little bit of a mistake, dropped down the order a bit, as Elliot Norin is almost within DRS range, 1.1 second behind him, as he's cleared Kuba Treziak early on. So Elliot perhaps still able to pick up a couple of positions here towards the end of the race. The gap up ahead, Tope is starting to lose quite a bit of time to Daniel Parodi. That could be good news for Daniel if he wants to pick up a race win tonight, because if he can get outside of the DRS range of Tope, that means he can let Tope fight with Joris and then try and drive away himself. But it looks like, because they're now in the middle of the DRS sections, that it won't be all that easy to clear Tope, despite having a one-lap tire advantage. The gap to Joris now and the race leader, 3 seconds. It will get closer, and I think Joris is on course to close that gap.
Yeah, and he's not even using too much of his ERS in the process. Barely 5% has reduced so far in the last 1.5 seconds he's made up to his rival up in front. Of course, Modesto, 10 positions he's made up since the start of this race, and he keeps on going. Now he's the lead car in that midfield bunch. Best of the rest even. 10 positions up. He has to fend off Violo, who's seemingly having the worst time out on track now all of a sudden. Jeremy not too far behind as well, followed by Sparky in the mix. So clearly Modesto having the time of his life there in the midfield.
And having his time of his life in the midfield is also Elliot Norin, who has dispatched Aryan Sanga, so now has a 3-second gap towards the drivers up ahead. But if he can close that gap, will have tire advantage. It could still go for potential P4 out here. Yours in the meantime, that gap was 3 seconds. Mind you, it is now 2.1 seconds. Yours getting a lot closer. Tope not going for the overtake onto Daniel. I think within 2 laps or so, we're going to have a 3-way fight for P1, as we see almost down the inside comes Simone Violo. But I think for Simone it is safe to stay put as he is now, because those older tires are only going to send him further down to the back of the field if he starts to try and make moves. Elliot Norin then was about 3.1, now 2.7, is starting to close that gap up to Sparky ahead. So I think we're going to see the drivers that made some late pit stops close in and go for some late overtakes.
Yeah, the midfield battles continue, and another significant battle coming our way. However, I might just have to hold that thought. Violo gets so close to Modesto on this time out, but he does decide to stay P5, or without an option pretty much. He just doesn't seem to have the pace as such to pull off a move like that onto Modesto. He's got Jeremy all over his gearbox now, so clearly he is threatened for position. Let's not forget, however, folks, up ahead, Joris, he is almost within range of DRS to Tope. So 1.3 seconds or so left. The gap between himself and Tope, 3/10 he needs to close in to ensure he has DRS. Oh, scratch that. It's a mere 10th now as he goes through Sector 2. He's getting closer and closer and closer.
Yeah, I think at the next first DRS range of lap 26, yours will be within range. Of course, it's going to lose a bit of time now because the DRS zone's round the outside on Simone Violo. Comes Jeremy Gallinet as he picks up a 3-second time penalty, 4 track limits. Still trying to hang around the outside of the Ferrari, but now has to yield in Sector 2. And I think he's going to line up for a Sector 3 move down that back straight, that long back straight onto Simone, and finally put in the charge towards Modesto Mena. Let's go on board with him, but he's not using his ERS, so looks like Jeremy does not want to go by, at least for the time being, and behind him Sparky not too far away either. A little bit of locking up tires there as we go. Let's now quickly go to yours. The gap now, the start of the lap, 1.5 seconds. Can he clear about 5 tenths towards Tope up ahead in the first sector? That's what he needs to do, or is he saving time a bit? He has 41% ERS. Up ahead, Tope 38, and for Danielle it's 33. So Joris has the superior levels, but only by about 5%, so that is not too much. And it looks like this lap he's lost a bit of time. He does need to get closer. It is now 1.3, but is going to lose time again in his next DRS zone.
Yeah, Joris in Sector 3 has refrained from using ERS on the last 2 laps. He's trying to play this into his favor of Tope and Parodi battling it out up in front of him and him closing the gap in the process. He's trying his best to hedge that bet, but I think on lap number 26 he's going to be a bit more cautious. You can already see he's within a second now, so he did use a little bit or something, or perhaps Parodi and Tope might have just fumbled a bit too much through the twists and turns, and now he is within DRS range after all, so it's all to play for the top 3 in the last 3 laps of this race.
Yeah, the fight is on now. We saw a little bit of oversteer for Tope, cost him a couple of tens, and with Joris picking up the pace just a bit more means he's now within DRS range. So 3 drivers up ahead that will be fighting for the race win. 1 reserve driver and 2 championship competitors, those of Tope and Joris. I believe they're also P1 and 2 in the standings. Joris P1, Tope P2. But Joris has the freshest tires, 3 laps softer, 3 laps younger, I should say, than Tope, 2 laps younger than Danielle Parodi, as we see Jeremy Gallinet go for the overtake onto Simone. But yeah, with that 3-second time penalty, he's going to drop down the order a little bit more. Elliot Noren now, so far in P8, so that is not looking good for him. And I think if Joris picks up the race win tonight, that might be enough to narrow down the fight in the championship between just him and Tope, if it stays as it is.
Okay, so there's more at stake than we think, and Joris is all over almost off the gearbox of Tope. Look how close they've gotten over the last few laps. That gap was at about 5 seconds the last time I remember, and he's made it up. He's made it up pretty well. He's made up good on his time. He's lost 2 positions from the race start, however. Did start on the race lead. That pit stop, it almost seemed like it was headed the opposite way, but of course Joris being Joris, he is the championship leader, of course, of PSGL PCF4, and he's just proving it out there. He's now on the gearbox of Tope, and he's just knocking on the door and saying, look here, I'm here.
Yeah, and perhaps an even more interesting stat, if Joris managed to win the race tonight, that means he will have won 6 out of 9 races. Not to insert a meme here, but that is about 66% of the races won in this season here at PCF4 at PSGL. That is amazing. That is something I've never seen before. I've never even seen a driver win about half of the races of the championship. If he wins tonight, he will have won more than half of the races this championship, even with 2 races still to go. Joris really put out stellar performance so far, but still has to clear 2 more drivers. We still have 2 more laps. We have 6 more DRS zones, with this being the first one. The fight is on.
Lap number 28, folks. Top 3 battling it out, almost level on ERS. Look how close Joris is getting. He sends it down the inside, makes the pass on to Tope. Almost gets alongside of the Aston Martin. Bangs wheels with the Mercedes once again. Tope is coming back. He wants P2 again. Falls short. As on lap number 28, through the twists and the turns, the Alpine gets ahead of the Mercedes.
And Joris is on course. This is exactly what the strategy was. Clear 1 driver in lap 28 and clear the other in lap 29. This is DRS zone 2 out of 6. Tope still gets very close to him. Tope sends it down the inside. Is there contact between the two? There is none. And they go side by side onto the main straight. We're on board with Joris, but Joris has the inside line. But this could be a breakaway opportunity for Danielle, but the gap is only 3:10, so it is not enough for that. 3 DRS zones remain. We're in our final lap. And it looks like also further down the line, Jeremy Gallané under attack by Modesto Mena, Simone Violo, and Sparky. Elliot Noren not being a competitor for that. Kuba Trasiak has to watch out, doesn't lose P9 to Arian Sanga, and Noel Carmen are in the fight for that. But we're up here for the fight for P1. What will yours do in our first DRS zone?
Oh, Perotti has to have a smirk on his face as the top 3 go through Sector 2. You can see Tope not too far behind at all, but Joris gets alongside of Perotti. So does Tope alongside of Perotti as well. He sends it down the inside, follows suit of Joris. Joris goes a tad bit wide. Here comes Perotti once again for P2. So Tope is stuck down in P3 after all. This is the final lap as they go through the twists and turns one last time. And on Sector 3, it's the last opportunity for anyone to make up a position.
But look what Joris did. He saved his ERS. He saved enough to have ERS for the entire back stretch, which should mean that Danielle can't come by, but Danielle's still looking for it. Round the... Oh, goes for switchback, late braking, very late braking, and he sends it past. Our reserve driver is about to pick up a race win here unless Joris beats him to the line. He won't. It's a race win for Danielle Perotti and only his 2nd appearance here in PCF4. What a race.
Oh, formidable. A formidable opponent for Joris, our championship leader, around this track. It's a shocker to me. Perotti sits as a reserve driver, but he's clearly proven that he can take it to the Titans of PSGL PCF4 at the very least. Danielle, what a win that was. Joris has to sell for P2. Tope got a feel for him. He was in the race lead. He got the strategy in his favor for a brief amount of time as well, but couldn't hold it. He does get a position up since the race start, and finish on the podium, but a bittersweet one for him.
A bittersweet one for him, but Joris is nonetheless going to extend his championship lead over onto Tope. Elliot Noren finishing in P8 might mean that he's just within the championship fight still, although we will hear about that when the results are finalized next week. The race win goes to Danielle Perotti, Joris Scusa in P2, and Tope in P3. That is your podium, and we saw some position changes further down the field, so with the results coming onto our screen in a moment's notice means that we'll be able to look at that now. The most positions were made up by Modesta Mena. I think he was able to finish in either P4 or P5, but we are going to see this now once we are loading. We see yours already mentioning interesting move, Danielle, so maybe something will still be said about that. I'm not sure if there was any blocking going into turn 17 there, but it was definitely Danielle coming out first and finishing the race there first. A race win for him, at least provisionally, but a good fight.
You love to see it. A reserve driver take a race win. Of course, Joris gave it everything out there. From pole, ends up finishing P2. I'm pretty sure he can, step away saying, in the championship at the very least, Elliot Noren nowhere to be seen. So the battle is on between himself and Tope.
Yeah, and that gap has now increased till about, I think, either 18 or 20 points. But we have our full results. Modesto Mena, our other reserve driver, in P4. Sparky then P5, followed by Simone Vaiolo. Jeremy Gallané, after his 3-second time penalty, does drop a couple positions. Then it's Elliot Noren, Ariane Sanga, and Kuban Trzeziak who are going to get the final few points. Outside the points, we find Noel Carmen, Tomas Kokeni, Emil Lundell, and a DNF for Matthew Bassett, which happened earlier on in the race, and the Charles Leclerc corner, as we mentioned before. But we've seen some great action out here in Miami, and I think next week we can only hope for some even better fights as we are going to head towards Silverstone.
Okay, Silverstone. Yep, I'm pretty sure after today, at the very least, we had 14 drivers, mind you, not an entire racing grid, and I can't wait. I'm already pumped, and hopefully, folks watching have enjoyed the race overall just as much as we have, because the battles, my oh my, from the midfield all the way to the back and to the front of the pack. Battles all around and a treat to watch.
And we're going to look at the standings in a moment because we didn't watch those earlier on. And actually the standings are even more favored towards Eurus as I thought they were, but more about that in a moment. First up the calendar, already mentioned next week, we'll head out to Silverstone before we have our season finale in 2 weeks' time in Bahrain. So 2 more races left, and with a point still to be given, we are first going to take a look at the driver standings. I'll quickly take you through them, and after that, Zatexor will take you through the constructor standings. First up, the driver standings. As you can see, Joris was leading the championship up until this point. A 21-point lead to Elliot Noren. He's not going to score that many points here today, but if Joris doesn't pick up the race win, means he gets 12. There was no fastest lap for him. Elliot Noren, I believe, was in P7, so he picks up 4, loses 8 points, is still within the championship fight. But yeah, Joris only needs to pick up like 5 points or so, and then he will be safe. Tope will score 2 points less than Joris, will drop back from 26 points down to 28 points down. So Tope would be the new number 2. So if nothing changes in the standings and the results that we have right now stay as put, then Joris is not a championship winner yet, but with a 28-point lead, that will be quite significant. So those 3 drivers are definitely the only ones still in the fight. Simone is going to fall outside of that battle, not scoring enough points here tonight. But the fight will be on next week in Silverstone between Tope, Elliot Noren, and Joris. Further down the line, we still find Corner N'Golo P5, Alan Banasek, both drivers not making an appearance tonight. Jeremy Gallané did pick up some points tonight, might make a little bit of a hop in the standings and try and pass Alan Banasek. Andres Franco also absent today. Emma Lundell, don't think he managed to pick up too many points here today, although he only needs 1 just to jump 2 positions. Matthew Bassett with a DNF. Kuba Trzeziak picking up a point tonight. Javier Domin not making an appearance. Sparky picking up some points, won't help him too much in the standings. Modesto Mena, who already finished P4 last race, again with a P4 now, which would help him to go past Sparky. And then, yeah, Noel Carmen in P15, and further down the line, you can see the points as they are. But in total, so far this season, 22 drivers have been able to score points. But up ahead with between 3 drivers, but the championship fight has almost been decided on. For constructors, however, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, quite different, at least in the front of the lead. What a lead Alpine has with 115 points. Of course, both Joris and Jeremy gets across the line, so good points haul for them out of Miami. Alfa Romeo, not the brightest of sights. Noren and Emil Lundell, both drivers, falling short. And you'd think that, someone like Simone Vaiolo capitalizing on this might have just been able to make that jump. And I think with the position that he did end up finishing, he might have just, upset the Alfa Romeo team and put the Ferrari running P2 in the constructors at the end of Miami. But of course, good points all for the Mercedes pair as well. Of course, they got a significant lead ahead of the Williams pair, neither of whom were there around Miami. And down in P6, of course, is Aston Martin. And if Pironi's points count, they'll be able to make that jump ahead of Williams, but I doubt it does. Regardless, the AlphaTauri pair had an opportunity that just slipped off their hands. Both Sparky and Matthew Bassett didn't have the greatest of times out there. And of course, the McLaren pair, Noah Carmen being the only driver out in Miami, means they might just be able to close that gap and you make that jump on AlphaTauri in the constructors standing at the very least. Of course, at the back, Red Bull and Haas, significant gap between the two, 25 and 4. Credit where credit is due for the Haas driver today, who seemingly might have just been the reserve driver. Could be wrong, but if his points count, he might have just closed that enormous gap to Red Bull after all in the constructors standings.
Yeah, it unfortunately was for the reserve driver, which means that no points will be given to Haas. On the other hand, McLaren and Red Bull pick up some more points than AlphaTauri, so it might jump them in the standings. But also here, Alpine is going to increase their gap at the end of this race, which means that heading in towards Silverstone, they are also on championship course, and if they pick up enough points, we'll be able to clear the constructor standings, and if Joris finishes well enough, we'll also be able to clinch the title. So next week is going to be super, super important, and that is going to be a race for us to watch.
Yeah, exciting races ahead. Of course, we got 3 races left in this season. 2 races left in this season. And it should be stellar ones. First, Silverstone. And next up, if I'm not wrong, if I get that flag right, is it Qatar or is it Bahrain?
It's Bahrain.
Oh, Bahrain it is. So yeah, 2 stellar races ahead. I'm excited, Myth, and I'm pretty sure you're just as much excited as I am, and so are the viewers, hopefully, at least after a race like this one. Battles all around, gripping finish for the top 3. I mean, if this isn't racing, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and I think we also have to give a huge shout out to the drivers here tonight, because this is a track where you can easily get into contact with another. The walls are sometimes very, very close to you, but the drivers overall kept it quite clean. So huge shout out to the drivers here tonight, putting out this stellar performance, and also great fights all the way through the end. A very interesting race for us to spectate, and also for you guys hopefully in the chat to watch. But definitely make sure you're out here next week when we come round in Silverstone. We'll be back at 8 p.m. British time, 9 p.m. European time. But next week, the championship might just be decided here at PSGL PCF4. So make sure you tune in for that. Looks like for now we don't have any interviews. I hope that we do have some interviews coming out next week if we are to crown a champion. But I am definitely looking forward to Silverstone. And I hope you are too, Zach Axter.
Yeah, surely am.
That is great to hear. All right. That means that we're going to round off for tonight. This was your race at Miami. This was a round 9 for PSGL PCF4. And next week, as I said, we'll be back for Silverstone. Round 10 out of 11. And the championship might just be decided there. See you all then.
Cheers, folks.
He's got the inside off, here he's through on the left hand side, hooks the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now, his finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium once again. The ghost is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.